Welcome to the How to Hero YouTube channel, where it's my job to awaken the hero within you. There's a hero within all of us. Today I wanted to talk about the Starseed mission update. This is some sort of new information that's come through to me through my guides that I felt called to distribute. And I don't think a lot of people have talked about this. What I want to talk about is Lightworker versus Darkworker or Shadowworker, and how this relates to Starseeds and other way showers. Whether you resonate with Starseed or not, this will apply to you if you're interested in this type of content regardless. So I encourage you to stick around. So as we move out of third density, so third density is the density of choice. This is where we decide what polarity we're gonna experience. We kind of go back and forth as we test the waters in different polarities to try and see what jives for us. Eventually, we awaken to the idea that, oh, we are meant to go this way or that way. We're meant to either serve others or serve ourselves. And there is no right or wrong there. There's no right or wrong to that conclusion. But this is when you have to look at things from a higher perspective in order to see that. So what I wanted to do first was talk about what a Lightworker is, I guess, a little bit, and then talk about Shadowworker and the metaphysics a little bit behind it, because it will help explain the necessity of both and also help to guide people in understanding how things are kind of working out. So I put this little thing together here. Here, let me see if I can... All right, so you have the 3D choice. This is where you choose polarity. This is where you decide consciously which way you're going to go. You have the service to others path, and you have the service to self path. And you see I put in between, there's this infinite loop. This is where people more or less, they interact with each other. So you'll have people, Lightworkers and Shadowworkers, interacting with each other. And they may not fully understand or grasp the reasoning behind what they're doing, but usually they'll be generating conflict with each other in different ways and using that conflict to polarize further, or to identify contrast and move away from different behaviors or different thought patterns, etc., that they weren't aware of. So essentially, these two groups use each other for reflections, looking at themselves, and in order to improve on their polarity choice and their path. And so both paths lead to creator, both leads to the infinite one, the all self, the everything, the universe, and both contribute experience to the universe. And so both are valuable and necessary. Without the dark path, for example, the light would not have the contrast that it needs to polarize. There's nothing to, there's no discontent there. There's no discomfort. There's no disharmony. There's no discord. There's no reason to change or improve yourself, because all is seemingly to be good. And when we're in the duality illusion, that this is where we use this catalyst for polarization. And so if we're in a state where there's no contrast to our experience, then we stagnate. Typically, we'll just kind of sit idly as far as our polarization goes and our soul's evolution. And this is actually why the veil was put in place. Prior to the veil being here, there was no polarity as such, because we had full control over our mind, body, and spirit in this physical reality. So we would control things such as our pain impulses and things like that. But this was a long time ago, and I don't even know if you would consider the third density beings that were there before the veil to be human. What I'll say is that our logos, or our earth and sun, decided to have the free will experiment in order to show contrast to itself, in order to advance sort of through this density in a more experiential way, a way that has more catalyst, more contrast, and thus is also faster. And it's not a faster to be more efficient necessarily. It's a faster because the experience is more powerful, and that's why both paths are needed. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about, like, I guess I'll first just talk about a light worker, what a light worker is. A light worker is someone who's called to radiate their light. That's it's about giving the self to others in many ways, while retaining your power is the trick. And this can be done in so many different ways. It's really difficult to even identify it. Literally, anything sort of creative, expressive. You may literally just be there to lead a team in your workplace and to really brighten their day. Be the type of boss that that makes the team love coming to work. It could be that straightforward, because you're impacting so many people in that scenario, right? Or it could be just working at your job and being a light in that job, and it will shift through your life. So as you move through different experiences and different choices in the narrative and the sort of the movie of your life, you'll have different opportunities to serve. And literally that's what the calling is. It's to notice when your service is required and to offer it freely. And a dark worker or shadow worker is essentially choosing the opposite polarity of that. So where a light worker is radiating light, a shadow worker or dark worker is absorbing light. And this is where that term sort of energy vampire comes from. And it's because we're reaching a new stage of ascension in the collective. We're starting to see the light workers, without necessarily understanding or realizing what's happening, they're starting to dip their toes into the dark path. They're starting to dip their toes into service to self. And they're doing this, most of them are doing it in an unconscious type of way. This is most likely a way for them to experience both sides of the coin before finalizing their polarity decision. Ultimately, you can kind of go back and forth, but we're gearing towards a positive harvest of souls. So what that means is our harvest for the souls that are going to be ascending in graduating densities, they'll be of the positive oriented way. This environment is not conducive to negatively polarized beings. They're going to find it. There's too much resistance, and because essentially when they try to manipulate or control a light worker, and they fail, they lose polarity because they end up seeing sort of a reflection of their self that they haven't accepted. And it goes both ways, and that's why the two are intertwined with each other and kind of bounce off each other. And so what this really is people starting to step into their power and starting to understand that I am presence, that they are creator, and then trying out sort of different methodologies of creation, different ways of operating in that higher frequency. And in the past, you would say that the shadow worker would be the unconscious people, and that would be pretty accurate to define it that way. It would be pretty accurate to say that the people that are sleeping are there, are people that hold big shadow, that aren't necessarily doing that internal work then, because it's not their time to, right? They're at their pace, they're perfect where they are. And so with non-judgment, the light worker then observes it and offers love and service. And sometimes that means a paradox, right? Because how do we offer service to those who do not want service, right? And the way that we offer service to those who do not want service is we just share love, and we hold space for them. We don't. It's sort of like a live and let live. Whereas a service to self oriented being will see a person, and this is where a good way to identify when this is happening, whether you're on this side of the fence, the service to self side, or the service to others side. And keep in mind too that people can back and forth between polarities. It's not set in stone yet. Things are still shifting, and people are learning, and people are checking out different paths. And so you step into that service to self path sometimes without really meaning to, or you may be just called more to the light. It really depends on your unique journey, and it's not uncommon for you to realize, for example, that you're highly empathic, highly intuitive, and it's really easy for you to manipulate people, right? So you may get some sort of kind of small joy out of just manipulating your way through a scenario, using some sort of deception, right? And it's not necessarily anything horrible, right? It could be white lies, it could be light manipulation, but it's still manipulation at its core, and it's the desire that we have to control and influence the others in our world that cause us to sort of go down this path. It's the unwillingness for us to let go of that control. And so typically when we're doing that, we're closed off in our heart, or our heart center is not flowing. And what we're doing is actually bypassing the heart, and we're moving into the other chakras, skipping the heart, and trying to access the higher guidance in that way, which we can do. We can reach creative infinity through, with or without the heart. And so it's important to recognize that because we're all ascending, and some of us are choosing more service to self paths, they may call themselves Lightworkers even, because a lot of them, essentially the same way that a Lightworker is dedicating their self to serve others or serve creator, the other is dedicating themselves to serve the self. And so if you just imagine that you could be so sure that serving the others is the best way for you to be. Or you could even say, it's the best way to be, period, right? And I'm not saying that that's my opinion. I'm just saying that somebody could feel that way. But feeling that way is actually more of a dark, negative polarity way of looking at it. And what we want to try and do as Lightworkers is maintain neutrality, understanding all are one, and understanding that all deserve the love that we have to share equally, including ourselves. And it's essentially, a shadow worker will, they may be quite awake, they may be quite conscious, they may be pulling away from societal norms, they may be totally withdrawing from, just like Lightworkers do, right? Or tend to do. They start to pull away from all those boxes that were made. The difference is that the boxes of the default operating modes of the Lightworker versus the shadow worker are sort of polar opposites, right? The shadow worker will, they may essentially get stuck in this concept that things should be done this way in order to move forward as humanity, right? They could be that grand. Even though they're service to self, they want to create the future that the self believes is the utopia future, right? It's not about creating the future for the others. It's about creating the future that the self desires. And what they'll tend to do is, these are the people that you might make a post on Facebook, and it's just a positive post that you're sharing. You get some messages from your guides, or something happens and you're sharing something that you wanted to share, and a person will come on there and sort of, you'll feel almost like attacked. You'll feel like they're attacking you in some way, even though they may come across fairly friendly. they'll be like trying to throw shots at what you've said when, you know, it's just your expression. And it's almost like if you write a poem and then somebody comes and craps on it, right? It's just your expression of your experience, and then somebody else comes in and pushes, tries to pull energy. And the way they do that is by in instigating some sort of conflict within yourself to try and change your mind about particular components to what you've said. And they do this, so that they can pull your energies, because the light worker radiates energy, right? They're the light polarity. They are radiant and sharing of the energy, whereas the dark worker, shadow worker, is drawing the energy in. And so they're there to try and take your energy from you, and you're there to give it to them, right? Like that. So that's why they get attracted to you as well. And it's not just them that's attracting them to you. It's you pulling them to you. It's not their fault. It's not, it's really easy to say, well, you know, if they shouldn't have said that, they shouldn't have came on my post and said these things. But that's the whole point of what they're doing, is to show you things about yourself that you don't want to look at. Components to the self. Keep in mind that they are you. They are you. You know, when we're looking at that higher perspective, when we're raising our consciousness and awareness, we understand that they are us. And the information that they're sharing with us, whether we want to see it or not, maybe they have great points. But that's the thing, is that they're trying to exert control and manipulate, and you as the light worker get pulled in. That's why you have those codependent relationships as well, or familial relationships that are you know, toxic for you, even romantic relationships that are toxic for you, right? Shadow workers are not always aware that they're shadow workers, the same way light workers are not always aware that they're light workers. It really, like a lot of musicians and artists and of different, you know, they're all, whether they realize it or not, a lot of them are light or shadow workers that are there to show shadow. Like, for example, Eminem is a really good example of a light worker, in my opinion. He expresses himself, right? You know, his like, how do I explain it? So he expresses himself and just radiates, but he doesn't allow the negativity to consume. And whether or not you agree with his lyrics or whatever, it's not super important. But he's expressing himself. What's the word? Authentically, right? He's authentically sharing his experience of the world, and he's not trying to, in most cases, change others, right? He's, you know, I think of him as a poet who uses a lot of satire and exaggeration to make and illustrate points and show beam a light on different types of corruption, and corruption of the soul, corruption of the mind, corruption of the body, and then corruption of the society as well. And I just wanted to talk about that a little bit. What else did I want to say? So as you're sort of bouncing around through all your learning and things like that, if you want to stay on the light path, then what you want to move towards is grace and mercy and non-judgment, and surrender. This is about surrendering your control. It's about releasing yourself to be lived through the universe. In this way, you maintain your power. You pull yourself away from the different things that are pulling at you energetically, that are negative in nature, that make you feel bad. You just sever those things off. And as a dark worker, you refuse to allow to let the universe control. You refuse to relinquish control, and you decide to put your power that you're also developing through magical practice, spiritual practice of some type. You put that towards improving yourself, empowering yourself, and controlling the situations around you through the manipulation of others, or through sort of different fear tactics or control. And so, for example, like you'll see a lot of psychics. Sometimes you'll go to a psychic and they'll start to talk to you about a curse. They'll be like, "Oh, there's a curse on your household," and there's there's different. Maybe you have demons with you, and they try to instill a bit of fear. They may not even be aware. Like that truly may be. They may not be trying to trick you. That may truly be what they are projecting. Right? That's what they're seeing. That's what they're projecting. But a lot of them are doing that consciously or not. They're creating negative and fear-based experience for the other, and they're doing that by essentially manipulating the other person. If the other person accepts that and says, yes, this is true, then they're giving their consent and letting their power go. And that's why a lot of these people, though, are they believe that they're healing. So they sort of help create a story for the person that there's this negative attachment. And typically there are negative attachments. So I'm not saying that these things don't exist, but what I'm saying is that a lot of different psychic workers will have this sort of dark spin on it. It'll be very dark. It'll be freaky. It'll be, like, for example, if I were doing a reading and I noticed I felt darkness and I felt like something was off, I would talk about it in a way that explains and empowers the individual to handle it. I wouldn't talk about it in a way that instills fear, because there's nothing to be afraid of in that situation. Whether it's a ancestral thing or like, who knows, but there's nothing to be afraid of. Whereas another person would, use that to instill fear, and then the client would accept that, which is giving consent to allow that to be their reality. And then they start to build on that story, and maybe they need to keep seeing this person, or maybe it leads to more sessions, or it causes them to be upsold on a different product or something like that. And again, it's not necessarily consciously done to manipulate. Remember that we have higher guidance that's leading us through intuition as well. And our higher guidance could be trying to show us the negative path, trying to show us this potential. And when we're doing these things, it's important that we use self-reflection to see, like, what are we truly doing? What are we truly offering? How are we truly serving? Because the spiritual community and everything is fragmenting right now. There's different sort of branches of thought. There's people that are seeing the oneness of all and relinquishing judgment and letting go, and living their I am presence and living in flow. And then there's others that are doing a lot of those things, but they're more focused on empowering themselves, empowering their view, whatever that view is, of reality, and then projecting that onto others and sort of making others feel like they should adhere to those different beliefs, and that if they don't, there's some sort of consequence to it. And in a lot of cases, both sides are very well versed, and both sides aren't necessarily aware that this engagement's even happening. And so I say this because there's so much sharing happening right now that people don't really know what's misinformation and what's not what's real information and what they can trust and what they can't trust. And what I'm trying to help illustrate is that based on the polarity and the path that you've chosen, you're going to have different teachings and different people resonate with you more. When you feel like somebody is attacking you, when you feel like somebody's pulling your energy away, that's because you're allowing that to occur. And you know, I'm not trying to take particular sides. It's best viewed from a neutral standpoint to see that all are one. That's the best way to view this. And it allows us to come at things from a higher perspective and understand that when somebody's trying to pull our energy from us, what is it that they're trying, what is this experience trying to show us about ourselves? That's where we need to go. And you know, what should we learn from this this opportunity? It should be viewed as an opportunity. The individual should be thanked for their expression. As it could be, it could be something that offends you deeply, and you need to go within and understand, why does it offend you? Why are you so tied to some sort of concept or idea that you're offended by the statement of a random person, or whether they're random or not? What does their opinion have to cause you to be so concerned and to allow it to sway you emotionally? This is how we develop self-mastery, and this is how we empower ourselves. And so when we're shining our light, when we're you know, being expressive and we're standing in the spotlight, we're going to draw the moths to the flame. We are like batteries. We are like batteries for all. And when we shine, it draws in all manner of folk. It's so important that we understand why these interactions occur, you know, what the purpose of it all is. And all of it occurs to serve creation. It's all equally important in the grand scheme of creation, and for the contrast that I talked about earlier. Literally, you're showing each other parts of the self that they don't want to see. So when the shadow worker engages you with some sort of attack, and it may not appear to be an attack, right? It just feels like an attack because they're really good at the same way that a light worker is really good at seeing another person's shadow. The shadow worker is also great at seeing the other person's weaknesses, the shadow. Both can see these things. Both are quite aware, and everybody's better at sort of assessing the other than they are at assessing the self. And it's because they haven't formed as many prejudices about the other yet. Especially if they don't know them. If they're familiar to them, then that's a different story. But we tend to be really good at judging people that we've just met. We're like human lie detectors, and the shadow workers are as well. There's nothing wrong with focusing on the self. If you think of it this way as well, focusing on the self is focusing on the all in its own way. It's also generating experience for creator. It's also generating experience and catalyst for the light worker, which in turn is a feedback loop for catalyst for the shadow worker. And it goes both ways. So the light worker gets attacked by a shadow worker in some way. It's not like an attack, but they get and then the light worker will feel like they need to get defensive, or they'll feel like they need to try to change the other person's mind. And that's where the energy starts to flow into the shadow worker. The shadow worker builds energy from that type of experience. Both are looking into a mirror and seeing parts of themselves that they don't resonate with. And so it's a two-way sort of engagement. And that's why these things constantly happen. And so I just wanted to kind of step back from that and try to look at it from that higher perspective. And I think I think the words live and let live really come to mind for me. Like I'm personally polarized to the light. I resonate with service to others, and so that's sort of where my messaging stems from. So it's hard for me to see fully the perspective of service to self, but from a higher viewpoint, I'm able to see the nuances, I guess, between the relationships of the polarities and why they exist, and the duality illusion. Eventually, the duality illusion will fade away, and things start to become one again. Eventually, that dark path, that service to self path, reaches a place where spiritual entropy is too high, and that path won't fully lead you to back to a creator, and they'll, after much soul searching and internal struggle, they'll need to readjust, and that usually happens in early sixth density. So this is not for a while. Beings can push and play and move through polarity in either fashion, and both are experienced, both are equally viable, both are form of service to creation. And I just wanted to help people identify sort of what's actually going on, and use these opportunities for catalysts, because all of these things, every experience with all of your senses, there's catalysts for the mind, catalysts for the body, and catalysts for the spirit. And everything that you experience, whether conscious or subconscious, is catalyst for your evolutionary growth, and should you choose to investigate it. It does take conscious investigation of these things in order to use them. Otherwise, you just have an experience, and then you attribute it to be negative or positive, whatever you do, but you don't gain anything from it because you haven't investigated it. So and this is why the hermit phase is so important, because it allows you to reflect on experience and draw the truth out of the experience, and then reemerge with sort of a new set of armor, right? A new skin, a new understanding of self. And that's what ends up triggering that hermit phase, is you go through a bunch of catalysts, and then you need to reflect. Anyway, so I don't know how long this is. This is getting pretty long, 30 minutes or something. So I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I hope it helped to illustrate the path. I didn't plan out the discussion too much, I'm sure you can tell. If you have any questions, like I said, leave them in the comments. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you liked it, consider clicking that like button and subscribing to see more of the stuff that I make. I'm going to plan on going live and stuff like that. I've been in a hermit mode. I haven't mentioned this really, but I've separated from my wife, and I'm in a new place. I've got new roommates, and things are going really well. But I've had to go through a period of sort of self-healing and self-reflection to try and move past a lot of shadow that I didn't understand that I had until this big change. And so I've been here a couple weeks now, and it's been great. So, but now that I'm starting to feel a lot better, I think I'm going to be doing more content, more stuff, more live streams. I'll probably be announcing some of my services as well for my one-on-one work, and how you can get into that, how you can reach me for that. So that's coming. Stay tuned. And beyond that, good luck on your path to adeptness. Good luck on your path to being the manifester that you came here to be. Step into your divine birthright, and go with the flow of the universe, and see where she brings you. All right. Thanks so much for watching. I love your faces, and take care.